I got some bad news for you. So, usually I'm the one who writes, like, the bits that open up these videos, but, yeah, I didn't write one for this video. I think I'm just gonna, like, fumble around and just, stumble over my words, and, cause I'm, like, I'm not really good with, like, speaking.
Oh, you mean like Bocchi the Rock?
Bum, bum, bum.
Bocchi has dreams of dropping out of school and becoming a rock star. But there's only one problem. She has crippling social anxiety. But when a local band needs a guitarist, Bocchi finds herself up on stage and one step closer to her dream. Will Bocchi be able to find her wings and soar? Or will she sink like a rock? Bocchi the Rock. Alright, Sai, so what does the Hive Mind consensus say that we think about Bocchi the Rock?
It's the most relatable show that's ever been made. I've never seen something so visually out there and creative.
She's literally me.
Can we talk about that? I guess to start this review off with a healthy dose of spite.
Spite and cynicism.
And cynicism of people talking about this show, which we both really like.
Oh no, we both love this show. Let's just get that out of the way.
But every video on this show is either Bocchi is really relatable, or I've never seen a show do weird stuff like this before.
Or this is literally K-On! With Watamote.
But yeah, every video talks about these things. And now so will we.
Okay, so right off the bat, the show gets a lot of comparisons to K-On!
Yeah.
Which I guess is not entirely unfair.
It's not unjustified. I mean, it's the most obvious comparison you could make, because they're both about, like, high school girls forming bands and, playing music.
Yeah.
Their manga are both published in Kirara.
Yeah.
They're both 4-koma manga that have, I don't want to say, because everyone's been saying, the manga is just whatever. The anime is what makes it quality. And I don't really agree with that. But in both cases, K-On! And Bocchi the Rock, the anime definitely, like, elevates it and really adapts it to an animated medium.
Yeah, but, like, outside of that, like, they're fundamentally different series, right?
Yeah.
I guess they have some similar, like, things going on thematically, but, like...
They're not sitting around and eating cake and drinking tea in this show.
No. The author, Aki Hamaji, the mangaka, she said if K-On! Was about, like, girls doing a music club, Bocchi was, like, more about girls in live houses.
Yeah, yeah.
She was really inspired by, like, Beck.
Okay.
Like, Beck and, oddly enough, like, Full Metal Alchemist. Which I'll touch on here in a second. But she was really inspired like Beck because she wanted to, like, kind of present, like, that live house kind of setting.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So...
It's a bit grungier than the prim and proper K-On!
Yeah, one's actually, like, focusing on the actual struggles of being, like, a small name band.
Yeah.
Trying to make, like, ticket quotas and stuff. And the other is more just like...
Just doing it very casually and kind of whatever.
Yeah.
Well, Yui and Bocchi kind of complement and contrast each other in interesting ways. Yui is very, like... Yui is not, like, a very, like, super social character. She doesn't have, like, anxiety or anything, but she's not shown to have, like, a ton of friends. She's shown to be, like, very, like, absent-minded and just sort of, Saturday morning cartoons playing on upstairs, if you know what I mean.
She eats glue.
Whereas Bocchi has, like, the exact opposite problem, where it's, like, she's thinking too much. She's overthinking things. She's very anxious. Everything that goes through Bocchi's mind, she's either catastrophizing, and it's the worst case scenario, or it's like a delusion of grandeur almost, and it's like something just crazy good happening that is just totally unrealistic.
Yeah, Bocchi also eats glue. But not because she thinks it looks like it tastes good, but because she thinks she'll look like a freaking weirdo. She doesn't eat the glue.
So you do have, like, I guess in terms of protagonists, they are interesting to compare and contrast.
So Bocchi actually exists in its current iteration because K-On! Does exist.
Yeah.
Because apparently in the initial draft of Bocchi the Rock, Bocchi was kind of more of a standard, like, cute girl, kind of standard protagonist, like, kind of more optimistic.
Yeah.
The editor, since this was going to be published in Kirara, the editor was actually the one that, like, pushed her to be like, hey, maybe you should kind of differentiate this character a bit and kind of gives it more of an identity. And so that's kind of why we got the Bocchi that we got on screen, was because K-On! Already existed.
It's like, wait a minute, we can't do this. Can you, like, change it a bit?
Change your answers up a little bit. That being said, another thing everyone seems to bring up is that the characters are named based on the Asian Kung Fu generation.
Yeah.
It's like a factoid everyone thinks no one's aware of.
It's like something that's going to come up in, like, Weeaboo Bar Trivia Night. you said this was influenced by Full Metal Alchemist?
Yeah, because, like, I guess her and her sister, like, they're both mangaka.
Okay.
Which is an interesting little factoid. But they both really loved Full Metal Alchemist, and so they watched the Full Metal Alchemist adaptation. And that's when she saw the fourth opening, which is Rewrite by Asian Kung Fu Generation.
Which is the best opening of 03.
Well, yeah, I agree with it.
We're going to get a lot of angry comments now.
In a way, I think that's what kind of really differentiates Bocchi from K-On! If K-On! Was a love letter to being in a band, in the sense that it kind of like romanticizes the experience of like practicing together, doing school performances together, you know, growing up.
Yeah.
Bocchi is more like a love letter to bands, like J-Rock as a whole, like the actual bands.
If you read the manga, because, you know, the manga is yonkoma, it's like, you know, 4 panels vertically oriented. But at the start of like every chapter, you'll have like the characters oriented in these images that reference a ton of Japanese rock music. And the first one for the first chapter, it references the music video for Rewrite, which is the characters all just kind of like floating in front of this wall of amplifiers and PA systems.
Oh, see, it comes full circle.
Comes full circle.
That kind of enthusiasm kind of bled over into like the fan works and stuff too, right? 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, I think most of the fan art I see for Bocchi the Rock is just like weird like iterations of like album art using the characters.
Fan art I've been seeing has been a lot different.
Oh. Don't sexualize the Bocchi. But no, I guess like that also kind of bled into like the anime production too. Cause like that, I guess that willingness to kind of wear your inspirations on your sleeve, they kind of took that and ran with it, where like Bocchi's just got these offhand references to like Evangelion and Ashino Joe, Dog of Flanders.
A really overt one for like Dragon Ball
I
Z.
think there's even like a Fully Cooley reference kind of just squeezed in there.
I mean, a good deal of this is adapted pretty faithfully from the manga.
Yeah.
People talk about like all these like weird animated sequences that are inserted in, and some of those are original, but some of those are really just expanding on jokes in the manga, like the one where Bocchi is thinking about what would happen if she got her like a social media account and how she would just become an attention whore, and she just becomes this giant Godzilla-like monster. That's in the manga, but it's only like one panel, whereas in the anime, they flesh it out into this entire bit.
Yeah, and like reading interviews with the director, who's, gosh, his name, Keiichiro Saito?
Keiichiro Saito.
Yeah, something like that. He seems like he's very, like, I guess he's got his start, like, cutting his teeth on a lot of, like, opening and, like, key animations and stuff, so he's very, like, visual minded.
Yeah.
Where apparently in an interview, he was saying that when he was reading it, was, like, always kind of thinking, like, okay, how can we use movement to make this joke better?
Yeah.
Or enhance the joke? I think that's something that is kind of understated when it comes, like, just having that kind of mentality.
Well, it's kind of something similar to what we talked about in our Spy X family video, where something the director there also talked about is sort of just fleshing out the movement between the panels.
Yeah. Mind you, Spy Family was directed by a veteran in the industry.
A grizzled veteran with a lot of great works under his belt.
We would not have expected this from this director, just because he's really only done like openings and like some key animations, and the only directorial stuff he's actually done up to this point before Bocchi was some episodes of like Idolmaster.
I think I saw
Sunny
some like
Boy.
Sunny Boy credits, yeah.
Yeah, he's not actually helmed his own project by himself.
But yeah, just from like, a directing standpoint, I mean, obviously, you know, they're not the ones like animating these like wacky sequences of like stop motion characters running around Bocchi in this weird fucking like zoetrope setup. But even just from like a planning standpoint and having to like get all these people involved and just even like thinking of some of this stuff is really out there.
I think people are going to underestimate like how difficult this would have been, which it's not going to be completely on a director. It's going to be, a lot of it's going to be
producers and episode directors.
And a script writer.
I mean, every anime is, yeah, I mean, every anime is an all hands on deck sort of thing.
For sure, yeah. But people don't necessarily like think about, like, this was a 4-coma.
Yeah.
Which, if you are aware of 4-comas, like, it's just like a 4-act kind of, like 4-panel kind of structure. So, like, it usually ends after 4 panels.
Yeah. You have 4 panels to tell your joke.
Right. And like, from what I've seen, which I haven't read a lot of it, a lot of the jokes kind of just end with Bocchi going off, like in her schizo world or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is just kind of like going back to normal. With the anime, they didn't want to make it like Nichijou or something where it's like vignettes. They wanted to make it more like K-On! Where it was kind of more of a consistent, like overarching kind of story. Yeah. So they kind of had to figure out how to integrate Bocchi's schizo, like, off-world shit into, like, a natural conversation, but not have it, like, come off as, like, weird, like she was just having a schizo trip, and kind of incorporate that into the dialogue.
Yeah, well, because her mental breaks are diegetic. Like, part of the joke is the characters reacting to her, I don't know, fucking popping.
What do you mean? Like a bubble?
Like a balloon. You have the characters react to that stuff in order to, like, stitch things together and have it, like, flow between each of the, like, set pieces and bits.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know, the difficulty that would have been to be able to integrate all that together in a way that worked to this level, I don't think it's going to be appreciated by a lot of people.
I mean, a lot of people, yeah. It's easy to, like, look at something like Bocchi going full, like, cyberpsychosis, cyberpunk Edge Runner style, and just think, oh, wow, that's really well animated. But, you know, if someone had to draw that had to be, like, planned out. Every decision, every small little thing had to be decided by someone.
I think that's where this production kind of gets elevated, is, like, that little level of detail put into the production, where they kind of just lean into the absurdity of the manga.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's, like, panel breaks and, like...
Yeah, Bocchi's, like, freakouts eventually just start breaking out of the panels itself.
How do you translate that into anime?
How do you get outside of a screen?
That willingness to, like, lean into it.
Yeah.
And they just, like, you know, complete media mix. Like, they have, like you said, the zoetrope fucking wheel, the fucking, like, claymation.
Like a live-action hand with all these, like, crazy filters. Or the, pixel art, like, segment that was just gorgeous to look at.
Or the fucking CGI, like, polygon model.
I would love to just be in, like, a boardroom meeting with, like the producer and, like, director and, like, people working on the show. And just seeing, and just, like, one of them just, like, well, what if we try this? And everyone's just like, yeah, sure, fuck it, why not?
In a way, this kind of reminds me of Ongaku.
Yeah.
Ongaku's kind of like, they show you these, like, really eccentric kind of people, and they kind of, like, lean into the fact that they're eccentric, but it's more like you're laughing kind of with them on their eccentricities.
Yeah, Ongaku never punches down on its characters and their eccentricities, and this show doesn't really do that for Bocchi either.
No, like, they did, like, a really delicate balancing act in presenting Bocchi.
There's a fine line in portraying this kind of character, where the joke is that the character is, like, relatable and you get it, or the joke is, look at this fucking loser weirdo. Laugh at them.
You're either gonna hit too close to home and then, like, everyone's gonna feel bad about themselves, or you go way too far off the deep end and, like, no one relates to it. They're just like, what the fuck is this weirdo?
This was definitely hitting close to home at several points, which I made fun of, you know, people for talking about how relatable this is, but, you know, as someone who also does music and was a loser in high school, surprisingly.
And is now a YouTuber.
A piece of shit. Because, you know, like...
Ah, hell. Here he goes talking about his fucking trauma again. Why the fuck are we talking about Bocchi the Rock at 4 a.m.? God, I'd rather be talking about that dummy head ASMR isekai. God, I wish that were fucking me right now.
But, you know, much like Bocchi, I would just, like, imagine myself doing it because I'm a fucking, like, narcissist. It's even, like, stuff that's not even really related to music. Like, there's a joke where, you know, Bocchi's on summer break, and she just wastes her entire summer break in her house doing nothing but playing guitar and watching YouTube videos about space. And when we got to that joke, I'm just like, wow, I really feel like I'm being fucking called out right now.
That's the thing about Bocchi that makes her work so well, is that she's, like, reflecting, like, the worst traits in, like, ourselves in such a way that makes her, like, endearing, because, like, you're just relating to, like, that struggle.
Yeah.
And, like, she wants to better herself. You know, she is just falling into the trappings that everyone does.
Well, it's like I said, you know, she just catastrophizes, or she does some, you know, at the very start of the show, at the start of the story, you know, she's, like, trying to, like, reach out, so she brought, like, her instrument to school, or, like, she put CDs on her desk, hoping that someone would talk to her. To even just like, cringe memories of doing stuff like that and fucking like, oh god, no, forget.
Slamming your head on the fucking floor.
Yeah,
I don't really relate to like those situations specifically, but even though I didn't experience those specific things, like I can still relate to her social anxiety on like a level,
Yeah.
I find Bocchi's presentation of social anxiety much more like believable than something like Komi-san.
Well, because in Komi-san, her anxiety is presented through very straightforward, like, moe database elements, She's got, like, the cat ears and the big eyes and stuff.
It's being presented from the protagonist's lens.
Yeah.
And, like, everyone loves Komi-san, even though she doesn't talk, and she's, like, held up on this pedestal, and then the protagonist is, like, pursuing her as a love interest. And so, like, all of her, quote-unquote, like, disabilities that she would have are kind of just adding to, like, this moe point bar or something, because it's being presented as a romance more so than, with Bocchi. Someone talks to her, she just looks, like, comatose and is, like, dead-eyed and looks like a fucking fish. And they're just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, it's so much more willing to make their characters, like, ugly, whereas, like, Komi's kind of feels more fetishistic.
We're gonna get a lot of angry comments now from people who really like Komi-san.
Good. Fuck. The story of Bocchi the Rock ultimately becomes like the story of this girl that's just using her passion for music to form these like bonds with others where she had previously kind of had trouble forming those.
It's not just a story of her trying that, it's a story of her doing it and it finally works.
Yeah. It's like her determination to succeed in her music, like even if it's just so she can drop out of school.
For her, it's like in her mind, her having a successful music career is like a matter of life and death.
I mean, she doesn't go to an American school, so. But no, like, it's that determination and drive is what gives her the confidence to take the steps forward to becoming the kind of person that she wants to be, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes when we get kind of hyper-focused on something, we can kind of lose sight of it. Like when she's kind of hyper-focused on, improving the social aspects, and she like is like, oh, I'm going to look people in the eyes and talk to them. It feels like it was all this energy to take this one little step. But as she's kind of just focusing on something she's passionate about, she's taking all these steps and not really even realizing it. But, I guess like with Bocchi, it's just kind of like she just needed the right people around her to kind of bring those qualities to light, right? Which it kind of leads us into like the emotional core of the show, which is, Bocchi's relationship with the rest of the cast. Throughout the series, we see Bocchi kind of growing as a person directly because of the people around her kind of pushing her to better herself. She kind of learns to cooperate and support others, and she's ultimately kind of learning to rely on others, right? Because, like, she spent so long in the closet just by herself, she hadn't really learned those kind of social skills.
Much like another very famous anime about a character who struggles to form human connections with other people, and it's about them forming connections with other people. She's Sweet Home.
At the start of, like, Bocchi, we see that her bandmates kind of think she's bad at guitar.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know how to play with a band.
Yeah, she's only ever played with herself. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, for those who haven't been in a band themselves, who might not intuitively like understand the difference in playing between a group and like as an individual, they're very different experiences.
Yeah, and well, that's something that kind of comes up even later, where, their band is like performing like their first like, actual show, and, they're not in sync.
Yeah, because like when you're playing by yourself, like you set your own kind of tempo, you can take your own beats.
Yeah.
Conversely, like the scrutiny is on you as an individual and your individual performance, but you kind of dictate that performance yourself. Mm-hmm. Whereas like when you're playing in the band, the tempo is set usually by percussion, and you kind of have to go with the performance of the people around you. So if somebody,
how fast the drummer is playing is how fast you are going to play.
Right. And if someone's kind of fucking up, you can't just sit there and play perfectly, or it just kind of emphasizes the discordance.
Or, as we see in the finale, something goes wrong for someone, and then someone else steps up and kind of covers for them.
Exactly.
You see, this is what they call in screenwriting character development.
It's almost like the perfect analog for like Bocchi's problem, right?
Yeah. Her connections with other people is reflected in the music.
Like Rio kind of teaches Bocchi, kind of to be authentic and like accepts that. Nijika kind of takes that a step further and kind of shows her, you're not going to disappoint us by being yourself. then ultimately Akita kind of shows that you can rely on them, which is all kind of masterfully presented through the performances, which I guess if we want to talk about the performances a bit, I generally thought they were pretty well done. Like, I think they kind of incorporated the CGI pretty well.
Yeah, well, if I'm going to have one complaint about the show, for a lot of just, like, the interactions and stuff, it's willing to, like, get very, like, expressive and strange visually. With the music performances, it's still kept very grounded.
They're very straightforward.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see some of that visual expression reflected in the musical sequences as well.
It would have probably enhanced the musical sequences.
Yeah, because, I mean, you look at something like Ongaku, and that's what, happens in that. It sort of emphasizes, like, the transcendentness of music. In terms of just overall execution, though, the CG looked pretty good.
We did watch the band performance in Angel Beats. And that was like, going back to that was like blowing our minds.
Yeah, we were like, what the fuck did they do here? Because it's like, it's perfect in its execution.
Like, it's like, what the fuck?
Like, we cannot, we're fairly certain that it's CG, but...
Oh, it's definitely, like, there's only, like, a few moments with, like, the drummer.
Yeah.
Where, like, her head will move in a weird way, because it's, like, rotoscoped onto a CGI body.
Other than that, it's like it's really hard to pick up on.
Which Bocchi kind of falls short of that. I'm kind of partial to the kind of like garage band clunky adolescent kind of J-rock kind of shit, like from Girls Dead Monster and Angel Beats. But what kind of elevates like Bocchi's music specifically, I guess, is like it's Bocchi herself writing the lyrics.
Yeah.
And so in like a way, it kind of paints the aesthetic of the show, where like even though the lyrics are like these really kind of clunky, like angsty teenage.
What was like the lyric in like the OP, like drum through
the pain.
We're watching like the opening, where it's like, what the fuck does that mean?
She watched too much Whiplash. But it kind of like, it makes like that teenage like angst imagery just kind of build on Bocchi's character, because you're kind of getting insight into like what she's kind of seeing, right?
Yeah.
It's got this charm to it, let's put it that way.
Yeah, my music tastes lie more with Ongaku. Just dun 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 dun.
Going along with the performances and like the execution, I think we both kind of didn't like how they did the performance going kind of off the rails.
Oh, the one where they're like fucking up. It's fine what they do. So I guess for anyone who doesn't know, or maybe watched the sequence and has no idea what our complaint is, basically what they did is very clearly they just like slightly tweaked, like sped up or slowed down some of the individual tracks in the song of an otherwise like normal performance. So them messing up, you can hear it a bit. It's not, I mean, because you haven't heard the song a ton within the context of the show, it's not necessarily like the most obvious thing ever, but you can hear it. And it doesn't sound as organic as it would in, like, a natural context if for the recording they were just actually, like, making these mistakes.
These mistakes are a compounding kind of thing, where if someone's going way off tempo, it puts everyone off tempo and it just, like, kind of snowballs.
Yeah.
And, like, mistakes that they actually have in the performance as it is in the show probably wouldn't be all that noticed in that setting.
No, well, because anytime you're playing live music anyway, there's going to just be like a natural level of variation. You're not going to play it the same way twice every time.
Right, and then there's also the reverb.
Yeah, and just all these things they need to take into account. But it's fine. It works for the scene.
There are ways I think you could have improved that kind of execution, but we're talking like very minor.
We're nitpicking.
In a way, I guess it's not as like quote unquote emotionally impactful or whatever as you would want from a climax if it was like the last episode or whatever.
Yeah, again, I think like a big sort of like crazy visuals really like just transcending for like a final performance would have been awesome.
Yeah, but like taking it in the context of like a larger story, like this arc, it's kind of subdued, but it's still really good.
Mm-hmm. I think the appeal of this show, to go back to the start, to kind of tie this all together, a lot of what appeals to the show and a lot of what people have talked about is Bocchi is a very like relatable character that's very funny and very like fun to watch, and the really eccentric out there visual sequences.
Yeah, I guess on that note, Sai, would you recommend Bocchi the Rock? Are you there?
Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Again, I keep saying this with every fucking video. It's one of my favorite shows of the year.
You're such a fucking hack.
I'm a fucking hack. It's not my favorite show of the year. I will say that. Lycoris Recoil still has like that title.
Oh, okay.
Moomy, do you recommend Uncut Gems?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, do you recommend Bocchi the Rock at least?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now anyway, I got some Bocchi fan art pulled up now. I'm gonna go get my rocks off.
God fucking damn it.